Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just keeping track of this. Saw Lindsay joined. So, welcome to our last I'll let you know. I'll let everybody know for the staff who all participated. This is our last orientation, or not orientation, but introduction, I guess. Chance to answer questions about the new fingerprinting policy. So I will. We're just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. So just to start off, most of you realize the reason that we are doing this and the reason we are trying to be, trying to reach our goal is, and when you have volunteers ask you this question of why are we getting so particular about this, is the safety and protection of our children. We all know that, and it's pretty critical. But I do want to share with you a little bit of the history behind this. So for those of you that have been around a while, you know that there has been a policy, Cooperative Extension has had a policy on child protection since 1998. I'm going to pull this in so you can see this. This is what is currently on the employee website. So we've been following this policy all along. But come to find out, now as I pull it back, in 1994, the university passed a new child protection policy. I have asked several times if any, like with our HR people, if anybody even knew that this existed, and from my understanding, most of them did not. So of course, that's what happens when you do that. Okay, so this is the policy on the protection of children. It is, when you print it out, is 16 pages long. What happened was essentially it came to our attention in about April of this past year that the policy had changed because the area director was trying to figure out how to deal with some of the positive results that happened on some background checks. And so he started digging into it a little bit and found this university policy. So, I have the link in the PowerPoint, and you can read that if you want to. It's super exciting. But essentially, at that point, we started asking some questions and realized we were out of compliance. And so we've been working with UNR trying to get into compliance with our university policy and also the Nevada System of Higher Education policy as well. So, through that, the new policy will become effective for 4-H youth development programs as of July 1st. Now, I have been letting people know that if you have background checks right now that that are sitting there waiting, need to be sent in, then please go ahead and send those based on this policy. Sorry, I'm just double checking to make sure I have everybody that's on today. So, and I did ask the question today of Dr. Lyles, because this has come up several times in these sessions, asking, is this for just 4-H or is this for all university extension programs? And essentially the answer I got was it is program specific. Yeah, are we sure that our offices are processing prints? Well, I'm hoping they're doing prints. They better be doing fingerprints, but we do have to, and I'll explain how to get them all sent out to be processed. But
Gary, what I mean is when I take a set of prints, are they being sent to DPS right now?
So the way it gets sent is when you take them, you're going to send them to University Police. Then they'll send them to DPS.
It's beginning in July, or
you can do it right now.
Okay, but I've taken I just need to know where the prints that I've just processed within the last few weeks, where did they go?
Oh, they probably, I'm not sure where they went at this point. We need to ask Ev that question. I will find out from Ev what happened to those. So, but essentially what the answer was is if you have a program that fits within the criteria of there is a potential that any overnight event, and also if there's a potential that adult could be alone with children at any given time, then we do need to, no matter if it's a 4-H program or if it's a master gardener or if it's living with fire or anybody, they need to go through this new process rather than our prior process. So I just worried about the 4-H portion of it. Is what I worried about. But essentially, I want to talk a little bit about the mandatory reporting, because this was something that was new, that came up just in the last, I didn't realize was in the new policy, the university policy. So we are mandatory reporters within Extension, and that includes employees, students, and volunteers that are university. If anybody suspects child abuse, then at a 4-H event or university program or activity, then you must report it to the University Police Services or your local police or sheriff's office or the local office of the department or the Division of Family and Child and Family Services. You also then have to report it to the provost's office, and that was the part that I did not know existed. And so that is that was a piece that they were very clear in our meetings that needed to happen. So essentially, when you think about an employee, it means any person that includes faculty, classified staff, graduate teaching assistants, graduate research assistants, any letters of appointment, postdocs, medical residents, and student employees. So, and then our volunteers mean an individual who's working with the university in a volunteer agreement. So, Lindsay, we'll talk about that, but that's still good. So, here is, and I just wanted people to know, and I'm going to be, what does that mean, report to the provost's office? I'm guessing that means that you just call the provost's office and let them know that you had submitted a report, of potential child abuse. And the reason for that is in the next slide. And I did not put the numbers of the local sheriff's department. You can tell by the policy, if you read the university policy, it has the number for Clark County and Washoe County police departments or sheriff's office, but it does not have anybody else's. So I was like, well, okay, I'm not going to put those in there.
And Carrie, what I would advise everybody is to check with what your policy is in your county, because in Washoe County, we have to report to DPS.
Okay.
And that's a 24-hour line.
Okay. And that could be according to the university policy, it says, those 3 areas. So I think that's a good check with your local county to see where you have to report. And the one thing I don't know, I'm not clear on, is if you have a volunteer that reports something, I'm guessing they probably don't want to call the provost's office, so that might be something. If they're willing to share with you that they reported it, then they would, then you would call the provost's office and let them know. So essentially what it comes down to is if any member of the university community fails to report, then they could be terminated and volunteers could be dismissed, students and volunteers could be dismissed. So, and then this is where I'm saying, I think this is where it comes down to the provost's office, where they want to know failure for the officials to initiate that timely notice, and then investigated in a timely manner could result in termination. Now, granted, I don't know how you're going to terminate, DPS or any of those, but that's what they say. So, but that's why I'm guessing they want the provost's office.
But once a staff person makes the report, they have done their job.
Yep.
What happens with it after that is entirely up to the investigative group.
I think it comes down to if it's reported to the university police and the university police don't do their job, then that's where they want to follow up. It would be my guess.
And therein lies the problem.
Yep. Yes. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the mandatory reporting portion of it. So then there is the fingerprinting process. Now this is probably the part that's changed more significantly. So essentially what we have to do is we have to complete, our potential volunteers come in and they work on the application process, the volunteer application. That includes the application, including those 3 reference checks, and then the fingerprinting. Now, I did find out must have been on Thursday, late afternoon, that there is actually a different form that we have to submit to the university police. There's a different set. We have to still do the waiver and the NCPA form, but they want 2 additional forms on top of that. So I do, and I've got those. I'm going to show those to you. Let me find it right here. Sorry, I've got to pull it over now. So there's this memorandum here. This has to be submitted, and then the only difference is, and I've never gotten an answer from the university police, so we're moving forward with this. This is the memo requesting fingerprinting. They have to have the instruction form, which is the next form, the background waiver, and the NCPA form. They say that they have to complete the policy on the protection of children training acknowledgement forms. Well, I have scoured the policy, and nowhere in the policy does it state that they have to complete the child protection training before they get fingerprinted. So I have said, our volunteers complete that training while we're waiting for the fingerprint results to come back. They're not going to get those 2 forms. So I'm just letting you guys, and I have not heard back any differently. Fingerprint card. Yeah, it's just 1 card, sorry. And Billy Sue, yes, I actually sent out, if you participated in one of the webinars last week, I actually sent out all the forms to those groups, and then I'll send them out again with this group, all of the forms that you need, as well as I'm working with Ashley right now to get them posted onto the website. So it's just the issue of they're not they're not compliant. So we're having to make them compliant. So then there's this fingerprint instruction card. And what it does is it tells you, or this fingerprint instruction form, and it tells you the information, and then it goes into the background waiver and the other form that you have to fill out. So those are in there. I've got them, that you guys will have those. So so those need to be turned in, and it says cards, yeah, and I meant 1 card, but essentially you've got those. I have been letting people know that the Adult Volunteerism Committee has been working on not necessarily changing the policy of the volunteer application, but just making it a more streamlined approach to the volunteer application. So that will be coming out in October. So here is with those potential volunteers, when they complete the fingerprinting at the designated location, and that could be wherever you want to. If you want to send them to the sheriff's department, if you want to do them in your office, if you want to, however, I think Clark County has been sending them to a fingerprinting agency. Now they have been, they will be getting a machine, but electronic machine. But they need to, instead of having them sent to either Eb or Paul, as we've done in the past. They need to be sent to this address. Now, the other piece that I will be sending everybody is the way the fingerprint card looks needs to be a little bit different. The way you fill it out needs to look a little bit different now. This is the example, and I will be sharing this with you as well. It has to be, yeah, they need these different. The OCA line is where you put your county name, and we need to make sure that we are putting our county name in there, because when they get fingerprints back, we need to know that they are, first of all, UNCE, and that they are, what county they are, because when we get the fingerprint results, we need to know who to send them to. So each office does them differently, Sarah, some of them. And the one thing I'm looking into is if a county wants to do the rolled prints, I'm trying to first of all, I'm trying to find out if you have to have special training. It doesn't sound like you do, but I'm also trying to work with police services to come and do that training for staff.
Sarah, you do have to be trained.
Oh, do you? Okay, because Leslie said, I've never heard of that. So
no, you have to be trained to roll prints.
Okay. So I will work, I've been trying to get that answer from police services, and, Leslie hasn't gotten back to me about that, but I will set up some training for our staff to, in all areas of the state, to be able to get that, if you want to do it in your office. So, and the electronic machines, we've been really trying to get the electronic machines for everybody, but they are about $15,000 a piece and about $5,000 a year to maintain them. So I don't think many counties are going to want to, as nice as they would be, I don't think they're going to be feasible in every county.
Yeah, that's why we still roll.
Yep.
Unless somebody has a magical budget to pay for all of that.
Yep. So, so Sharon was trained back in 2008 and has been rolling prints since then, yeah. And I think probably we don't have too many that are doing the rolled prints. Most of them go to the sheriff's office, but that tends to be a little bit of a hassle as well, because they're not open at the most convenient times. So I put in the example card. Sorry, I forgot I did that. It's not in my book because I did it after the fact. So essentially, once the documentation gets sent to University Police Services, they will then send it to DPS for processing. What will happen with the billing of that is UNCE as a whole will be billed for those prints or that processing, and then Dan and I have been trying to figure out how we're then going to turn around and bill the counties for those prints. I'm not, that's why we need to make sure that county is also on there. So,
Carrie?
Yes.
It used to be that each of our cards had when you put that example back up there, mm-hmm. There's a number just above that was the unique number to each county.
Yeah, they will not let us do that anymore.
That MNU number.
Okay, yep. They will not let us do that anymore.
Why?
I don't know. They want everything to go under the university account. So this is, yeah. We have to get rid of the two accounts from the northern and the southern area, and then we have to get rid of that's why they said under that OCA number where it says Salon or whatever it is, that's where they want the county name. And then, so once they get the results of the fingerprints, the University Police Services will let the Civil Rights Compliance Officer know the results. It was determined above me that that's who is going to be dealing with the results. I don't know from there if they will send the email out to the counties or if they will let, my office know the results from the counties. We don't know who that person is. That person is still being hired. In the process or in the time till that person is hired, then it will probably be me doing this. So the only ones that will have access to the fingerprint results at this point, this came from Dr. Lyles, will be myself, Dr. Lyles, the Civil Rights Compliance Officer, and University Police. That is my understanding. So actually the area offices are taken completely out of the process. So, and then there will be one of three results, as you know, and this part isn't changing. It's either they're going to be cleared, they're going to be pending, or they're going to be denied. So you will get either an email or probably an email letter, essentially is what it's going to come down to. And I'll let you know, it's a form letter, essentially. We're going to have a form letter. But you will be the 4-H personnel, and then with a copy to the extension educator or the program manager, whichever one is in the, whichever one you have in your office, letting them know that the volunteer has cleared the background check. If there is a positive result on a background check, then you're going to get a letter telling you that there is a problem with that background check and that there needs to be further investigation. So once they determine, and so University Police, Chief Garcia will actually be making those determinations now, not the area directors, and they will let the university, or they'll let the Civil Rights Compliance Officer know, and you will be notified of those results. Either they'll be accepted or they'll be denied. I asked about, because I've always seen it to where we might ask, or we might have a, you're accepted with provisions, I guess. And I was informed that we do not accept with provisions anymore. So I'm going to keep track of all of that. The one thing I'm asking the counties to please do as you are moving forward with this process, I'm really trying to keep really good records on how this is working and not working in our counties. And so if you can please keep track of, when you sent fingerprints in, like the date that they were sent in, and then if when you get the results back, those are two major pieces that I am trying to, because we won't know when fingerprints are sent in and when they're not in a central location anymore, except for University Police Services. So that's why if you guys can keep track of that, and if it gets to be too long of a time frame, if it's taking 6 to 8 weeks to get those results back, then I need to have those conversations and say, this is not acceptable. We've got to work through a different system. So again, if you guys can keep track of that, that would be fantastic. They have promised me that it will not take them. If Sam mails them, you can have Sam mail them into police services. Yep.
So I'm going to tell my HR people that when I go to work tomorrow, to say that from here on out, starting July 1, even now, we'll process our own prints.
Yep.
And that way Sam can create an Excel data sheet to say when they were when they were sent out of our office.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And like Lindsay, for you guys, and where you guys have them sent out, you might want to, I don't know if you get a report, and I think Marie was on here too, and Sandy, if you guys get a report from the police department saying when people came in for their, because I'm not sure, do the fingerprints get mailed out by the police department, or do you guys mail them out from your office? That might be a better, I don't know who knows that answer. But, those are some of those things that we need to be thinking about, how do you keep track of those? So.
For us, Gary. Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, they should be coming back in a sealed envelope that's got I guess like a sticker over it, so we know it hasn't been tampered with, and then they're mailed in.
Okay. So that'll work. So you guys can still keep track of those, of when they get mailed out. Okay. Cool. So that'll be one of those things that, depending on what process you have in your county. Any questions on the fingerprinting process? Okay. Next is probably one of our biggest changes, is the child protection training. So while we're waiting for our fingerprint results to come back, we have to have all of our volunteers watch the State of Nevada Department of Child and Family Services video. And I do have I did redo a little bit of the policy the other day, and I put in the link to the YouTube video. That link will also be on the website. I'm going to actually put it in the under the policies and forms section of the 4-H website, so the volunteer can just click on it and watch it. It's also going to go into the employee resources page, just so everybody's aware of where that is. So you will, but I will send it out in an email too. But everybody will have that version. Starting in October, we will be doing because of the next slide, we're going to be getting that electronic signature essentially in 4-H online saying, yes, they have watched that video. But there are paper copies of the forms that you can use to obtain the signature saying that they watched the video, as well as reading the designated information packet from UNR that's on child abuse and neglect. And then we need to collect the document as well. I'm going to share the information. Sorry if this is the information packet that they have to read. And most of it's done by UNR, but there's also a copy of, or UNCE. There's also this Child Welfare Information Gateway. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to, and then there also is a copy of the Board of Higher Ed policy. So they have to read that. They do have to, and then this is essentially, I'm just going to share with you this is what the form looks like. It's very simple, but we do have to collect those. In addition, they will need to complete the 4 orientation modules. Now, I will tell you that I've been struggling with how to get those accessible for volunteers in an easy and simple manner. And I did late last week, I sent an email to the university asking about their web campus, essentially. Was told we could not use web campus because it is paid for by student fees, but they do have a Canvas where we can use Canvas to create these modules, which we can do they won't have to have that whole separate login into eExtension. And so, and we can keep track of who completes them, who doesn't, etc. So I am working very, very diligently in the evenings trying to learn Canvas, but then I've also learned that there are people on campus that know how to use that program. So I can, where eExtension, there wasn't anybody that knew how to import the data into eExtension. So I was having to go to other states. So I am working with them, and I am doing everything I can to have those up ASAP. So they're available. They're already available in both English and Spanish, so those will be available in both areas. The other piece, because I think that our self-study guide is 1,000 times better than the document that they have to read and even the video that they have to watch, I think our volunteers still need to do that self-study guide. But I am, last week
that self-study guide is a requirement.
Well, it's not according to the university.
It is to UNCE.
Right, but my understanding is now our UNCE policy is, and we have to follow the university policy. That's why for us, we're going to still require it.
Because that document that you showed isn't even an updated document.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So it doesn't even have updated statistics. I mean, if you looked at the author, all of those people are gone.
And I have...
In Washoe County, they'll still be doing the self-study guide.
Well, it's actually going to be a state requirement still to do the self-study guide. I have been talking to, last week on the call, Jill was talking about the training that she does, the interactive training she does. So I'm going to work with Jill too about potentially offering some trainings, putting together training and offering that across the state. So just so everybody knows. So what we're going to do is, this is the kicker. Every volunteer has to complete the university's child protection components every year. I pushed and pushed and pushed to get it to where they only had to complete it every 3 years, and to no avail. They pretty much just, and these are the types of things that I'm also keeping track of, is how many volunteers, how long it takes our volunteers to get it completed. And also, all of those different, how many complaints we get, all of those things. So, because my plan is I'm going to go back to them in not very long and say, okay, here's the deal. What I would like is all of our volunteers every 6 years to complete those online orientation modules and the self-study guide. I think it's a good refresher to do every so many years. I know that it's, and we have to, in a couple slides, we're going to talk about re-fingerprinting, and they have to re-fingerprint every 6 years now. And so I think that's a good time to get them to complete these pieces. But just as a reminder, is if there's a break in service of 1 year or more, then that volunteer needs to complete the entire process again. And Sharon, yeah, my understanding is that Jill, that you guys have participated in the training from Jill, and so I think if we can work together and get some other options, all the same information is taught. So, any questions about the child protection training? I know this is the fun one. Okay. Then I threw in the workday requirements just because we know these have been around, and we've been really trying, to me, this is all part of the process as well. So essentially, once the volunteer has cleared the background check and they've completed their child protection, essentially the 4 components of training, then we need to enter them into workday, because this kind of goes along with some of these pieces as well. So what we have to do is you need to set up an appointment with that volunteer to sit down with them at a computer and start or somebody in your office needs to do this, to sit down and work through the onboarding process through Workday. They are, so I know Sharon mentioned the other day that she's been entering them in. I think she said none of hers have actually completed the onboarding process through Workday, but they do need to be entered in there, and I've been doing some checking, trying to find out some answers to some of those questions, like, are they, they should be getting emails. My understanding is
they're not, Carrie.
Okay, are they going into their spam folder?
No, I've had, their volunteers are they're dying in Workday.
Okay.
Nothing is happening to them. I've been tracking my new camp people. And so Sharon just said hers are receiving emails, but mine are not.
Okay.
Mine, I think the reason why mine are is because as soon as the fingerprints were sent off, I went ahead and went in and uploaded them in to Workday. And within 48 hours, well, after they came, the fingerprint clearances came back. Then I loaded their information in. Brad has to approve that information. He signs off on it. It comes back to me. I start their information, because there's a part that we have to do.
Right.
They get their emails within 48 hours.
So
I'm following Sarah, I'm following the directions that Alyssa put together.
Yeah, and those are the ones that I'm using. And when I upload all of their signed off policies and the volunteer agreement, and that gets uploaded, and then I upload when they complete the self-study guide, but so far they're not being communicated with.
Yeah, mine are all. I've had 4 now, and they've all gotten emails. 2 people have deleted their emails because they didn't know what they were. So now it's a process of going back, because they have to create a net ID.
Yes, they do.
They get a user, their username, they get a net ID, and then it's just this big. I've got one gal that's almost through it. and it's taken like 3 months.
Oh, it's
Yeah, and like I said, mine are not, they're not getting communicated with at all. It took one about almost 6 months.
And so
Yeah.
I'm trying to find out those answers about Workday for everybody. The one thing I do know, the instructions to input the volunteers into Workday, so Alyssa put together some really good instructions. Paul put together some really good instructions. So those are out with some staff trying to work out the bugs, but I'm trying to meld those two together.
Yeah, there's a couple of steps missing, so I can let you know what I've written on my note sheet just to say, here's what you need to do next.
Yes, exactly. Those are the types of things, and my goal is to have those out by July 1st. Now, it says in here that all volunteers need to be put into Workday and that we have to have them inputted by December 31st. Well, I will tell you that is our target date, but no, because it's not just our new volunteers. We have to actually input all volunteers, so any of our past volunteers as well. And Dan and I and Ivory and even Mark before that have talked about how we can do that to help the counties out. And the suggestion was made to get a student volunteer or student worker to be able to input all of those. But you can't do that because you have to put in their social security numbers and their birth dates, and we can't have numbers written down.
Yeah, and that's really sensitive information because we have to have their social security number, their race, their gender. Having a student work, I would not be comfortable with that.
Yeah. So, we were trying to figure out though, so the counties didn't have to sit and do that for everybody. That was probably the biggest issue. But we will have to have everybody in there. I know we've run into a few issues where we've tried to reimburse some volunteers for expenses, and because they're not in Workday, that bogs up the system. So our goal, our target right now is get any of our new volunteers or any of those that might be reimbursed for some expenses to get them into Workday. So think like our shooting sports instructors, our nationally certified shooting sports instructors, or if you have anybody like for camp that might want to get, that might be reimbursed for some stuff, we need to get those in there. Otherwise, we need to just slowly chip away at all of the other volunteers. And the reason for that is the reason they have to be put in there is because of the workman's comp and liability insurance. If something were to happen and the university were to go into Workday and they're not in there, then they're going to question why they're not in there. So, and I will say, because we have 3,500 volunteers and we can only do so many at a time. We only have so many hours in a day, but we need to work on getting them in there. Any questions about the Workday stuff? Our final step is just the volunteer. Once they get the application done, you just need to go in and get them enrolled in 4-H Online. So that way, because that's the other piece. I know it seems like it's so many different pieces, but we need to get them enrolled in 4-H Online. So that way, when I get asked questions about, hey, is this person a volunteer? And I've had a couple of those. I mean, I was trying to figure out how many volunteers we had for this process because I was trying to give them an accurate idea of this is not, 15 volunteers once a year. This is, however many. And our system is a little bit goofy, but I think we're getting it cleaned up now. It looks like numbers are a lot better, like a lot more accurate this year than they have been. So background checks, we do have to, our volunteers and faculty and staff have to be re-fingerprinted every 6 years. I don't know who's handling it for faculty and staff. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is going to be for the volunteers. So I will tell you, university has said that all volunteers need to be re-fingerprinted because they haven't gone through this process. I have talked to Dr. Lyles, and he and I have our priority at this point is to get our volunteers that have been with our organization prior to 2012 to get those, you will have 1 year to get those re-fingerprinted. So before June 30th of 2019. So this morning I had a conversation about, how do we do that? And, my advice is maybe you start with those that have been here the longest and move backwards to get anybody. Now, I will say that, for those volunteers that have been with us since 2012, they will need to get re-fingerprinted. But again, our priority is those that have been with us 6 years or more. So any questions on that? At this point, I'm going to say they don't necessarily need to complete that self-study guide again and the modules. Let's just get them re-fingerprinted. On the next go-round, we can have them complete those. Just a reminder too, some of you have heard Dr. Lyle say this, that our volunteers cannot be working alone with youth until they have completed the fingerprinting as a minimum, preferably the entire process and been entered into 4-H online, but the fingerprinting is the bare minimum. So we need to keep that in mind. And then resource volunteers. So if we have resource volunteers, and this is where, this is where it gets a little bit, I know, no, if you need to get, it's, if you need to get their information, our target date is December of 2018, but knowing to get them into Workday, it's probably going to go until June of 2019. So that date, I need to make a change, but we want to get them in there as quick as we can. But it is better for them to, as you're getting them, as you're re-fingerprinting, that's when you put them into Workday. So, okay, resource volunteers. So these are people like workshop presenters, maybe judges at the fair. I'm trying to think of some of our other resource leaders, those that aren't working all the time with kids. They may just come in periodically. And I know, I think Sarah, Lindsay, and Sarah, you didn't end up going to campus to judge this year for FFA, but Lindsay and I were both there, and we had to complete the information packet and sign the document that said we read it to be a judge for FFA this year. So some of our volunteers are going to be used to this now, but we are asking that, we need to send them the link to the video and the information packet and ask them to please complete that and then sign the document, and you can collect those documents when they come for that event. If you have camp chaperones, which sometimes we have, that's the only thing they do. It could very much, Marie, be with Farm Days presenters. I know that that's a huge amount of work, but that's what the university policy says. So, and they're not budging on that either. So be thankful we don't have to fingerprint them. That's all I can say. Be thankful we don't have to fingerprint them. But essentially, if you have a person that only chaperones camp or only does, like maybe they're a 4-H parent and they're going to chaperone a trip, you do have to have them complete. They do have to be fingerprinted because it's an overnight event. For those, I consider those semi-resource leaders because they're not involved in the trenches every day. They would not necessarily have to do the orientation videos or the self-study guide unless your county wants them to, but they would have to complete the UNR child protection information. But they do have to be fingerprinted. That question has come up in the last week about camp chaperones or even the lifeguards, if they have to be fingerprinted, and yes, they do, because it is an overnight event. And then in addition to this, and this has been done in the past, I don't think it had been done for a few years. In this last year, it was done sort of. Dan and I really didn't know what it was, and we didn't know what they needed, and so we just kind of said, sure, this looks good. But in the future, we know what it is now and we know what we have to do. We are going to be collecting an inventory of all extension programs. It is, lifeguards are paid for the most part, yeah. So, but the question has come up because there are some that did not print. So, but anyway, so we're going to be collecting an inventory of all extension programs and activities that involve children. So what we're going to be asking for is the name of the program, the person responsible for that program, the location, and then the number of children and whether it was an overnight stay or not. I'm still trying to get clarification on 4-H programs. I'm hoping that we can just do a blanket 4-H program and that we don't have to do like each individual county. On the previous one, I believe it was just blanket, but who knows with all the changes. I don't know. And it's a new person doing that inventory. But we will be asking the counties for that information by February 1st because we have to then turn around. I think it's due for us on April 1st. So we have our 4-H group reports pretty much suffice, but we have to put it in a different database. So we might be able to go into 4-H online and get a lot of this information. I may have to ask for a little bit of additional information, but for the most part, I think we'll be able to pull it off of 4-H online for the 4-H programs. But for those of you, yes, can you hear me screaming now? It actually won't be me doing it. It'll probably be the civil rights compliance officer, but until that person is on board, then it will be me. So, but that includes, our summer camps, our day camps, range camp, the Heart and Shield program, probably farm days would be my guess, in Carson and some of those other, all these fun stuff that we do. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up though, that would be required. So now's the time for questions. I know there's probably going to be a few questions. Hopefully I've gotten some answers so we'll be able to do this. So there's not quite as many questions as the first day, but there might be. The other piece, yes, the employees are supposed to take the child protection training. I do not know who is supposed to be in charge of that. I think when Stephanie was here, I know fingerprinting got done by Stephanie, but in the northern area, but I have never had to take the child protection training except for when I judged FFA. So I don't know. I'm leaving the employee part up to, if they work directly with youth. But I'm leaving the employee part up to Dan to deal with at this point. So. And I'm sure he hasn't even thought that far ahead. So in the email that I'm going to send out to everybody that's participated in this, if you need access to Workday to be able to input volunteers, then if you can just shoot me a note back. I know I've got Marie on there. I think Billy Sue, you said you needed access. And I think Stormy did as well. What I'm doing is sending a note right to Dan. I think he's up in your office, Sharon, this week. Or today. So I didn't email him today, but I will. Yeah, you're supposed to complete the self-study guide. Oh, okay.
Carrie?
Yes.
Carrie, if when you're talking about Workday, Workday's already the RHR people supposedly set that up that, like I have pooled. So I'm in Workday, and because I have direct responsibility for volunteers, I have a pooled Workday category, and I think Sharon does too. So people who are directly working with volunteers, that should already exist.
Yeah, it doesn't for a lot of people. I don't know why. I think they just, I don't know. I know, yeah. I know Stormy and Billy C both said that neither one of them had access to be able to do it, and there's a couple others too. So, yeah, it's the fun stuff of the, So I'm trying, So I'm trying to figure out that access point.
And then for people who don't have access, it might be something as simple as, designating them.
Right.
Well, that's what it is. Because
Yeah,
Brad
Amber
had to add me to his pool and go ahead and okay me before my Workday would activate.
Yep.
So I could get into Workday, I could do nothing in Workday. So when Brad did my approval, my supervisor signed off on it, then it activated me, and now my volunteers that I'm inputting are like just like Sarah's. They're, you know, there's the pool, and they start popping up underneath me.
Yeah.
So that's those people that don't have that yet. It's because their extension educator or whoever in their office is going to sign off on them needs to do that before that will ever even happen.
And I think Dan can do it too. I think he can give you that access, because I know I've asked him for a couple others and I think he's been able to do it. But if not, I'll be contacting those extension educators to figure out how to do that. So, and in like Stormy's case, she doesn't have an extension educator. So it's me, and I,
right. Right.
So,
I think between you or Dan, you can give her access for her
Yeah.
pool. So
Right. Yep.
And then I also had a question last week about if they already work for UNR and how we go about doing that. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if Workday let us know that? Yeah, it would be awesome. There's been a lot of things that I'm learning I'm supposed to be doing in Workday that I didn't know. Gotta love it. Anyway, if they work for UNR, they should have already completed everything, but I'm double checking on that answer as well. So, because, as we don't have access to background checks and that kind of stuff. So
Carrie, when you say worked for UNR, I thought if people were in paid status, they couldn't volunteer.
Students.
Okay.
Students or graduate students, or there's a whole variety of people. So those are all the kinds of questions. And then we're still trying to figure out if your volunteers at any point get an email about completing the sexual harassment training, please let me know, because we do have one county that's happened to, but then they haven't even been entered into Workday. So we don't know why they're getting these emails. So we're trying to clear that up as well. It's all these little things that just, keep coming up. So, and I agree, Sharon, Workday is impossible every day.
Yes, it's a new and different hell every single day.
Yep. Yes, it is. So any other questions, thoughts? My biggest thing to ask you as a county is, I hate to say this, but if you can document how this process is going for you at the county level, I would really appreciate it. Like I said, I have fought tooth and nail for some of these things, and they're just not budging. So I was told in order to change the university's policy to make exceptions for 4-H or extension in general, we have to go to the provost. So I want to make sure we have, I can't just say, well, it's not working. I have to have that documented proof of what's not working and why it's not working.
So Carrie, what's really, really important, and I know this puts a lot on your plate, but it's critically important that you get to us how we have to do those cards. Because I'm starting to process new volunteers, and I am using our existing cards. So who knows where these are all going?
Yes.
So I need that like ASAP. Yep. And then Dan at some point also needs to let our HR people know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I've got the email. I sent out the email from last week's group, and I will just forward you that same email that has all of these documents in it. And like I said, I sent all the stuff to Ashley this morning, but I wasn't even thinking about the fact that it was not compliant. Like, they're all PDFs and they're not compliant. And so she's been working on trying to get them ADA compliant at this point. So I've got to learn how to do that.
No, you don't. That's the university's responsibility. So even if these are on the employees only website, they have to be compliant?
Yep.
Where is that written?
I don't know. That's just what I was told. So
I question the accuracy of that. So,
Yeah.
because that's password protected.
And some of the documents will only be there, but there are several of them that are going to be, like, I want to make sure the YouTube video link, the policy itself is up on our website. And then also, so the volunteers can see, you know, that this is the policy, so they don't think we're just making crap up. And then about, you know, and then the link to the YouTube video and the link to the information packet. And then the self-study guide, I don't have it up on the general website, but if at some point, it is on one of them, but if we want it on the 4-H website, we can do that as well. So it's all of those pieces, but I know she started working on it today. I got her all the documents that I needed today, so. Yeah, but I'm putting everything up on the employee, including a copy of the PowerPoint and then all the examples that we need. So, yeah. And the other piece I want to let the counties know too is if you have volunteers, really start screaming about this. If they're just grumbling, you know, sometimes you can, but if they really start complaining, do not take those complaints. Send those to me and I will make the decision about whether those complaints need to move forward up the chain and they may be sent up the chain. So, but we decided, you know, I had told Dr. Lyles from the very, very beginning that I would not allow the county staff to take abuse from volunteers over this policy. So we will, you know, and there may be some that need to be told, you know, they need to go up and upper administration needs to hear those complaints. So, but, you know, like I said, if there's little bits of grumbling, you know, we're going to get grumbling because we're all kind of grumbling. But if we just, you know, as I've said with everything, if we can try to keep and keep track of how many volunteers that we lose from this process, for sure. You know, if we can keep a positive attitude, which I know it's really tough to do, I just smile and say, okay, this is our new process and we're going to do it. If we can try that, then hopefully we won't get as much grumbling, and just remind them it's for the safety and protection of our children, you know, and nobody can fight that. I mean, you know, so, but the other piece I want you guys to read read that university policy, because there's a piece in there that is very interesting about university facilities. But I'm choosing right now not to read that policy. So I'm not going to say
what are you referencing. I'm not the one out of the administrative manual.
Yep.
On facilities.
Yep.
So Carrie, that's not fair if you say read that, and then, I mean, what are you asking us to do with that?
Oh, just keep it in your mind. If something comes down the road, if you read that, you're going to see, essentially it says that any group that uses a university policy has to follow the university child protection policy.
That uses a university facility?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I've kind of known that's always been in place.
What's a university facility?
Any place that's university owned.
Camp?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all those user groups are supposed to follow our policy. Yeah. So no, I don't hear that.
Yeah.
And none of you. Yeah.
Okay.
That could be fun.